NAFTA has generated wealth for Mexico, but that wealth has benefited those who have an important, for example, companies, businesses, large businesses, that can certainly be benefited by this opening of the economy. But what happened to the typical Mexican? What happened to the workers? What happened to the peasants? They have not been benefited in the same way, in spite of that huge generation of wealth.
Se había puesto la situación sumamente crítica.
The first time I crossed, I was 8 months pregnant. Life was very difficult in Nogales. My husband would work for 3 days and then have no job. He would work all day from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, but it wasn't enough.
I lived in Mexico when the free trade agreement went into effect. What I saw immediately was that mom and pop businesses went out of business right away when Sam's Club and Walmart came into town. They simply could not compete. People talk about the legality of Mexicans as they cross, and they refer to them as illegals. But I would like to say, well, whose law and who has impunity and who doesn't have impunity? What I see is that we have a war that's directed towards the South. We have billions and billions of dollars of technology and infrastructure and a real and a virtual wall and all of these warplanes that we saw to, quote, protect us from terrorist activity, when in fact we haven't had one apprehended suspected terrorist on the southern border, when in fact the people who are crossing the border are people made poor. And I don't mean made poor by God, I mean people made poor by people. They're smaller than they should be because of malnutrition. They do not look or feel like the enemy. So I bring you here to this particular place to, one, remember the heat of the desert, to remember the beauty of the desert, but also to remember the perils of the desert.
Many people have been walking through the desert for 3, 4, 5 days at a time without sufficient food and water. And especially this time of year when it's over 100 degrees many days out in the desert, people come back, are very dehydrated and often feeling dizzy and woozy, and they may have some gastrointestinal problems, stomach upset, such as throwing up, both from the dehydration and also from having only had contaminated water to drink.
It's difficult for a Mexican to leave Mexico. And when you get to the US, it's even more difficult to make something of yourself, to earn a bit of money. It's unjust that we suffer so much to achieve the American dream and then be humiliated, maltreated, and not get what we deserve.
For many Mexican migrants living here is living a life in which they are going to express feelings of isolation, alienation, certainly loneliness, nostalgia for their places, because if they are not able to speak English well and to integrate themselves not to a network of English-speaking friends or co-workers, neighbors, etc., it's going to be very, very hard for them. The only social institution that they are going to be seen as supportive of them are going to be churches.
I talk to migrants all the time who have been apart from their kids for 8 years or 6 or 7 years, and they'll say, you know, I'm doing this for my kids, I'm doing this so I can send my kids to school, I'm doing this so my kids will have a life that I never have had, but yet their kids are at home resenting the fact that their dad's away.
It's difficult to watch people cross the border. If our government were more just, we wouldn't need to leave our family in our land. We love our land. We feel free here. We feel oppressed when we are elsewhere. When I was away, I was always afraid I would never come back to Mexico.